Hi everyone, in this video we'll be working through a typical quiz or test style question involving composite functions. And the question is the one you can see on the screen here. We're told, given f of x equals to x squared plus 2x and g of x which equals to 3x minus 1, we need to first of all evaluate f of g of 2, and then we need to find an expression for f of g of x. So if you're up for it, go ahead and press pause and try doing this on your own, and then watch the correction. If not, let's get started. So I'll start by moving this question to the side. There we go. And now we can get started. I'll quickly write SOL, as I often do, for solution, like so. And here's the whole idea. For the first question, question 1, we need to evaluate f of g of 2. So let me just write that, f of g of 2. Now there are two approaches for doing this really. One of which is to just evaluate g of 2. Then once we get the output value of g of 2, we plug it inside f. Here's what I mean. I'll go ahead and evaluate g of 2, okay? Where g, or rather g of x, is equal to 3x minus 1. So g of 2 I'll obtain by replacing every x I see inside g of x by 2. And that would look like this. We'd have 3 times 2 minus 1, which is equal to 6 minus 1. In other words, g of 2 is equal to 5. And I'll go ahead and box that intermediate result, like so. Now, since g of 2 is equal to 5, to find f of g of 2, all we need to do is replace g of 2 inside this by 5. In other words, if I carry on up here, all I have to calculate now is f of g of 2, which is equal to f of 5. And so, to do that, I copy the function I have for f of x, but I replace every single x I see by 5. And so that would be 5 squared plus 2 times 5. And 5 squared is 25, so that's 25 plus 2 times 5, which is 10. And of course, 25 plus 10, well, that's equal to 35. So f of g of 2 is equal to 35. And I'll go ahead and box that result. There we go. And now another way we could have found this same result is by finding an expression for f of g of x, and then replacing x by 2. And so, since in this second question we need to find an expression for f of g of x, I'll make sure to show you exactly what I mean once that's done. So, let's move on to question 2, and I'll just write a little 2 at the top here. There we go. We need to find an expression for f of g of x. Now, to find this, all we have to do is copy the function we have for f of x, but every single x we see here, we're going to replace by g of x. In other words, this will turn into g of x squared, so I'll write g of x in parentheses squared, plus 2 times g of x. Now I replace every g of x I see here by its expression involving x, so 3x minus 1, and so that would look like this. We'd have 3x minus 1 squared plus 2 times, in parentheses, 3x minus 1. I carry on and I'll move slightly over to the left to make sure I have enough space, and I'll say that's equal to 3x minus 1 squared, which will be equal to 9x squared minus 6x plus 1, plus 2 times 3x minus 2 times 1. In other words, I'm distributing the 2 across that pair of parentheses, which leads to 6x minus 2. Now let me stop there for just a second. If ever you're not sure as to how I find 9x squared minus 6x plus 1, remember that to expand 3x minus 1 in parentheses squared, we need to use the formula a minus b squared, which equals to a squared minus 2 times ab plus b squared. Indeed, applying this formula to 3x minus 1 squared, we'll obtain 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. That being said, I carry on. Gathering like terms here, we have negative 6x plus 6x, which is 0, and we have 1 minus 2, so that will give us negative 1. So, all in all, we find that this is equal to 9x squared minus 1. And just to be clear, this negative 6x and the 6x cancel out. And of course, 1 minus 2, well, that's the negative 1 we have here. And so that's the expression for f of g of x. And I can go ahead and box that final result. There we go. Now remember at the beginning, I said that there were two ways of evaluating f of g of 2. One way is the way we did. In other words, we found g of 2 to start off with, we found 5, and then we replaced the x's we had inside f of x by 5, and that led us to 35, which is indeed the correct answer. But another way we could have done this, since we had to find an expression for f of g of x, would be to find the expression that we just found, so f of g of x, which equals to 9x squared minus 1, and now we could go ahead and just calculate f of g of 2 by replacing the x we have inside the expression for f of g of x by 2. Indeed, that would equal to 9 times 2 squared minus 1, and that's equal to 9 times 2 squared, which is 4, so 9 times 4 minus 1. And now 9 times 4, well, that's equal to 36, so that becomes 36 minus 1, which equals to 35. And as you can see, we obtain the same result by using this method. So there were 2 ways of answering that first question, question 1. And there we have it. That's how to answer this typical quiz or test style question on composite functions. There we go, everyone. I really hope that helped, and if it did, please hit like on this video, drop a comment down below, and even subscribe to this channel to try and help getting this video out to as many students as possible. All that being said, that's it for this tutorial.